October 1944, low haze creeping over the pines around Rechlin-Lärz. A captured Mustang sits at the end of the test circuit, drop tanks snug against the wing's aluminum dulled by German winter. Hans-Werner Lerche settles the harness with a practiced tug and lets the throttle come forward on 2 fingers, the way you place a scalpel, not a hammer. The supercharger finds its clean note and holds it steady, controlled, while the minutes of fuel write themselves as a thin chalk line in his head. The stick hums with a fine living tremor, oil warms, glycol breath drifts sweet and hot along the floorboard. For a few heartbeats, the world is only needle arcs and horizon numbers in the green, everything inside its proper box. He takes the circuit with the calm of a surveyor. Trim touch, rudder tick, nose walking level. The Mustang carries its weight differently than a 109 or the long-nosed Dora, more keel, more leg, but the balance is honest, and honest is useful. He files the sensation without praise or scorn. The oath he made to himself years ago rides with him. Keep discipline, hold altitude and energy, never trade position for impulse. Beneath the oath lives the thing he doesn't write on paper, the fear that one day the duel will not matter, that perfection at the edge will feel like speaking poetry into a factory whistle. The circuit opens, air clears, and he lets the prop bite. The drop tanks drag in the mirrors of sound, then settle. The airframe becomes a single sentence. Sound A holds smooth supercharger song, the reassurance of a metronome. He notes manifold pressure coolant temp fuel transfer rhythm. The glove seam presses a thin crescent into his palm, and the Mustang answers his smallest thought with an obedient nod. There is elegance here, but it is a blunt elegance, a carpenter's plane rather than a watchmaker's spring. Memory does not ask permission when it arrives. It kicks in like a steel door, 8 American, 50 seconds, spooling up into a grinding industrial buzzsaw that vibrates the ribs and turns air into shrapnel. Shock returns not as fear, but as math, the way it always does for him. The seconds of fire on target, the probability curve of survival collapsing with each stitched yard. The calm note of the supercharger keeps singing, but behind it the other sound soars at his concentration, and the thin chalk line of fuel minutes shortens by 1 more mark. He runs the Mustang down the far leg, and feels what the numbers were whispering in English briefings and German memos alike. This machine was built to be present. The stick does not flinch at low-level bumps. The wings carry fuel out where it buys time instead of grace. He rolls to a heading and holds the nose just above the trees, the prop arc pulling the countryside backwards. Another sensation inserts itself, sight, not sound. Rows of Mustangs, lifting in waves in his mind's eye. Silver bodies with drop tanks flashing dull light, one wave replaced by another, before fatigue can do its work. He logs the thought and doesn't argue with it. Wind ticks along the canopy frame. He climbs back to pattern altitude, and on the downwind, the radio crackles with a fragment from an Allied recording, captured days earlier, replayed by a ground tech as a recognition drill. Keep them covered, don't be pretty, stay. The words are short and heavy, a doctrine in 3 beats. He tastes the contrast the way a mechanic tastes metal in the air before a bearing fails. Their promise is not about winning a duel, it is about never leaving. His breathing stays on a 3 count, but the space between the counts narrows. He turns base, then final, and lets the main wheels kiss the concrete with the cleanest of chirps. The airframe murmurs to a stop. The cabin smells of hot oil and effort. He keeps his hand on the throttle a second longer than necessary, feeling the engine's last even pulses through the quadrant. The oath sits where it always sits, sharp and bright. The fear sits beside it, newly awake. In the hush after shutdown, the Allied line echoes again. Don't be pretty, stay. And the antithesis lands with the weight of a spanner on a bench. He understands that what he is measuring is not only handling. It is time. It is presence. And the chalk line is still shrinking. Under the hangar lamps at Rechlin-Lärz, the Mustang looks like a practical joke that kept flying. Rivet lines are not elegant. Access panels wear quarter-turn fasteners instead of jeweled screws. The gun bays open like cupboard doors. Someone near Lerche mutters the old comfort line, crude American airframe, and a few mechanics snort in agreement. He lets it hang there, then watches how the jokes die when the panels come off in seconds and a fitter is elbow deep without swearing at a captive nut or a bespoke tool. Crude is what you call a thing that refuses to be precious. The contrast sharpens as the morning warms. German ground crews move with watchmaker caution. Alignment jigs, shims, little rituals that keep perfection intact. Across the bay, the Mustang invites hands. The oil screens sit where a cold man can reach them. The plugs come out without the choreography of 4 men and a prayer. Parts label themselves in a language of stamps and stencils. Dimensions repeat across the airframe like a drumbeat. Interchangeability is not a word here, it is a posture. Lärz runs a finger along a quick-release latch and feels the doctrine turning under his glove. He has spent years defending performance curves, measured to a fine edge. Climb rate here, roll response there. The duel won inside a narrow envelope guarded by discipline. But discipline does not swap a power plant in a single shift at a depot 2 countries away and put the airplane back over the front before a man's bruises have faded. Discipline does not fly a replacement wing by rail at night and have it waiting when the damaged one limps home. Simplicity does that. Repetition does that. 1,000 hands trained to do the same motion without music does that. The radio on the bench crackles with a clipped request from a dispersal truck. Lärz answers with fewer words than necessary and notices his own voice has lost courtesy. He catches the change and logs it tone, tight jaw set. He walks the line of captured Allied spares prop blades, wrapped in waxed cloth magnetos in crates that stack perfectly wiring looms tagged with little paper tongues. He tries to imagine asking for a Dora's loom at a forward field after a long night and sees the answer, not today, perhaps not this week. Perfection is a favor you beg from the rear. Presence is a habit that arrives on a truck. When he straps in for the second sortie, the scan speeds up. Gauge to gauge horizon mirrors back to the manifold. He is not anxious. He is translating. The Mustang treats him like a line worker treats a sturdy tool, no question marks, no finicky temperature span where the machine sulks. Drop tanks, sip, then fall away clean. The engine settles, and the airframe asks one question only: where next? He hears himself think, an unkind thought about home designs, how a thing that drinks effort to stay perfect becomes a kind of vanity when the air is thick with enemies and the clock is a hammer. The contempt line returns on landing when a senior officer wanders close enough to lay a hand on the laminar wing and deliver it again, crude. Lärz answers with a neutral nod and says softly, efficient. He explains with care that sounds like heresy, that the beauty here is not in the curve, but in the access. A depot crew can change a heart without disassembling a soul. A field armourer can harmonise the guns and close the doors before dusk. If a panel bends, another panel fits. If a hose splits, another hose finds the same bracket holes. The officer frowns as if the word cheap has been smuggled into the room. Cheap is not the point. Replaceable is the point. Replaceable means the next sortie lifts. Afternoon brings ferry chatter over the wireless voices, stepping a chain from one field to the next, weather and fuel, a mantra that moves metal like a river moves logs. He pictures the map with little arrows crawling in patient lines from factories across oceans to muddy strips within artillery sound. None of it is romantic. All of it is decisive. You can be brilliant for 10 minutes and still lose to a machine that is good enough for 6 hours and returns tomorrow with a fresh engine. He notices his habits failing him in small ways. The first time he flew a perfect circuit in a 109, he felt taller than the world. Now he feels practical. The first time he rolled a Dora into a climbing turn and held the nose like a surgeon holds a margin, he felt the old oath glow. Now he feels the weight of a toolbox being set beside his seat. This is not a betrayal of skill, but a betrayal felt by skill abandoned by the very war that once worshipped it. The duel has not ended, it has been surrounded. On the last run of light, he taxis past a pallet of standardized crates, ready to be pushed toward a truck, spark plugs, filters, hoses, tires, all stamped, all waiting. He remembers a winter night when a home unit waited 3 days for one specific coupling to arrive because the airplane's beauty demanded that one coupling or none. He does not say the memory out loud. He only watches a young mechanic on the Allied pallet tap a crate with his boot and check a number that matches another number without thinking. 2 numbers agree, so the airplane lives. If that is crude, then crude is the new aristocracy. The radio asks for his landing time. He answers with the time and nothing else. He is careful not to sigh into the mic. He has shifted the blame where it belongs, and it does not feel like an argument won. It feels like a door closing behind a creed. The machine under his hands, the crates on the pallet, the voices stepping the chain across the map, they are not better duelists. They are better at existing. And existence, he realizes, is the one tactic no philosophy can outfly. Clouds sit in torn sheets over Mecklenburg, the light thin and glassy. Lärz is back in a 109K now. Not the captured Mustang home metal home gauges, the familiar bar of soapstick that lives on fingertip pressure and nerve. The scramble call is clean, and without adjectives. He lifts into the cold and draws a rectangle in his head, climb, turn, pick the seam, spend nothing early. The oath breathes with him, hold altitude, hold energy, don't get dragged down. Contacts bloom as dull motes at 2 o'clock high, a bomber stream the colour of pewter with silver flecks darting along the edges. He watches their escort pattern with a technician's contempt that has learned to fear itself. The Mustangs don't carve, they flow. He sets his entry sun-side shallow dive roll to align one clean pass, then back to height. The air hardens against the canopy. The prop bites. The world narrows to closure rate and the brief, sweet geometry of advantage. Timing clicks. He rolls through the sun's smear and drops the nose a hand's width. The 109K answers like a fencer's blade nose, light rudder whispering the engine a solid bell note under his feet. There, one Mustang slides just a fraction too wide from his element, a human mistake that every doctrine permits twice per day. Lärz lets the pipper drift low to account for climb and squeeze steady and short. His thumb hesitates 1/10 microfixation on the sight ring, the tiniest hunger to make the burst perfect, and the window moves. He corrects breath hitches, squeeze again. The first stitches walk near the spinner and vanish into sun glare. He knows by feel that only the outer edge of the pattern-kissed metal. He should brake now, trade the pass for position, and reset the clock. He holds half a heartbeat too long. The nerves in his right hand flicker. He feels the tremor as a separate animal riding the glove, asking for just one more fraction of a second. He wrenches himself back into the oath, unloads and climbs. The radio crackles, clipped efficient ground control, marking altitudes and bearings, a name without a verb, then silence. He answers with a single word that contains 3 meanings seen moving later. The Mustang he brushed has already tucked back into its pair, as if the air knitted shut behind it. Lärz finds clean sky, adds 200 meters of insurance, resets the picture. The bomber stream goes on with factory patience, box after box, the escorts writing cursive in the margins. Discipline says the next pass will be better. Discipline has always been right when the sky was simpler. He runs the second attack with 0 ornament. Dive angle precise throttle where the prop doesn't overspeed sight, just off-center to lead the turn. The shot is there. He squeezes at the exact count he teaches in lectures and watches the bursts cut 2 clean lines across a Mustang's left-wing route. The airplane flinches, holds, then slides away, trailing only pride. He is lining for a corrective tap when the air turns thick, new elements arriving from nowhere and everywhere at once, fresh pairs stepping into the corridor like a well-timed stage crew. He has lived this beat before from a distance. Up close it feels like walking through grain as a machine scythes in even rows. He pulls into climb and feels the animal again in his hand. The tremor is not fear, it is expenditure. He can sense metric Y the way a prospector senses water seconds of ammunition, life being traded for seconds of nothing. The numbers do not lie. He has burned a slice of his day into the air and bought only a scuff on paint. He runs his scan faster to keep from thinking temps pressure, horizon mirrors, back to the sight, back to the clock. Each scan steals a thought. Each thought tries to become a doubt. On the third pass, he tries cruelty. He ignores temptation, refuses the bright target clause for the bomber edge where the escorts thin. For 3 full seconds, there is only him, a fat dorsal spine below, and a ladder of tracers walking true. He feels the gun vibration through his hips, sees panels jump, and knows he has done real harm. The discipline in his chest flares with the old satisfaction. This is the duel. This is why you practice until your wrist hurts. Then the air fills again. New Mustangs roll in with the lazy confidence of men who know another pair is 10 minutes behind them, and another pair 10 minutes behind that. The harm he has done is real, its meaning is not. A voice cuts across his frequency, friendly and exhausted, asking for relief timing. Another voice answers with times that sound like train tables. Lärz's radio reply to ground is shorter than it needs to be. He hears his own breath and doesn't like the edge on it. He has not lost a fight. He has paid for a conversation that keeps getting interrupted by fresh speakers. He checks ammo the way a man checks a clock that's lying his mind, tells him there must be more seconds left than the counter admits. The tremor rides the glove again. He locks his wrist against the stick to hide it from himself. The fourth run is textbook, a descending off-angle cut designed to harvest one inattentive escort and vanish. He does everything right. The sky does not care. A new pair simply arrives into his plan and makes the plan a memory. He leaves without shame, because shame wastes altitude, and altitude is the only currency that still buys time. The bomber stream does not congratulate him for his restraint, and the escorts do not heckle him for missing. They just stay. He climbs until the engine's note thins, turns wide, and watches the flow below like a man on a hill watching a road. Somewhere in the headset, a recorder plays back an Allied fragment. Keep them covered, don't be pretty, stay, and for the first time, he feels the words as a physical weight in his forearms. He flexes his fingers, and the tremor is gone. In its place is a fatigue with edges. Discipline is still inside him, intact and honed, but its uses are being fenced in by something that does not duel, does not preen, does not even gloat. It just arrives on schedule. He makes one last pass, because honor is a habit, not because it will matter. The burst is late by a fraction he would have laughed at last year. The pattern grazes and slides away. He brakes cleanly, climbs, and lets the altimeter calm him. Below relief elements roll in exactly where he would put them if the problem were his to solve. He can admire it without loving it. He can hate it without denying it. On recovery, he taxis past the fuel truck and listens to its slow, patient clatter. A groundman signals with 2 fingers and a flat palm, minutes and motion unromantic, precise. Lärz shuts down, and the sudden quiet feels like a trick. He sits with the harness loose and counts backward through each pass to find where excellence went. It didn't go anywhere. It's still strapped to him, sharp as ever. What left was meaning. The sky did not ask for the best man. It asked for the next one, and then the next, and then the next, until even a perfect burst became a gift the war did not need. The sky is noisy before it is loud. A thin fretwork of engine notes, wind hiss, clipped syllables over the set. Then the old industrial buzzsaw rips across the ribs again. 8 Brownings, opened somewhere below and left of the sun, the same cruel vibration that crawled into his memory at the circuit. The body answers before the mind signs the order. Heart rate spikes like a fault on a gauge, 130, 140, breath chopped into hard thirds. Hans-Werner Lärz feels the oath sit up inside him and ask for altitude, ask for patience, ask for that practiced refusal to be dragged. He feels himself nod to it. And then he tips the nose. It is not a panicked drop. It is the smallest theft from his own principles, a half-second surrender of height to buy distance from the saw. The instrument glass reflects a pale face, and the harness creaks. The 109K loves the decision because the 109K loves any decision that turns potential into speed. Trees sharpen on the ground like teeth. The hands remember to trim. The mind is late. He tells himself it is a reposition, a lateral slide to clean air, a smart retreat into a fresh energy well. But there is no fresh well today. There is only the river of them, the escorts, stepping into place with the patience of a machine. The set claws with 2 voices at once, ground ticking out vectors that don't solve the picture, and a calm stranger counting relief windows as if reading the time aloud. He tries to lengthen his breath and clips it instead. The tremor that embarrassed him earlier becomes a full-body hum. Not ragged, just present like standing near a generator. He rolls to look back over his shoulder, and the canopy frame throws him a view he will remember for years. A silver pair crossing behind him, without haste. No dramatic pounce, only the quiet confidence of men who know his next choice before. He makes it. Altitude is a bank account. He has always said it that way in classrooms and briefings. He has just made an emotional withdrawal. To pay interest, he should climb now, accept the heat, rebuild the margin. The oath clears its throat. He keeps the nose down one heartbeat longer. Shame is not a red flush or a shouted word. It is the knowledge that no one forced your hand. He forces the throttle forward, as if more noise could reverse the last 2 seconds. The air smooths at low level, the trees lengthen into streaks, and the saw fades. Victory in a room he never meant to enter. The Mustang to his left does not chase. It slides to a parallel and lets existence do the work. He could climb at the edge of the forest, throw the 109 into the old rope trick, and make the other pilot choose between discipline and greed. He does not because the buzzing is gone and the silence feels too expensive to lose. He tells himself he is preserving the airplane for the next pass. He knows he is preserving himself from the feeling of that saw living in his bones. The heart learns a new count and refuses to slow. He angles away from the corridor and looks for a seam in the weather. The light has gone flat, the color of war maps. Far behind, the bomber stream advances with its patient geometry. The escorts continue to trade places like men holding a heavy door for one another. He tries to find hatred in himself and finds only accuracy. The world he trained for expected a duel and wrote poetry about the man who could hold his nerve at the edge of a stall. This world expects attendance and writes tables. For 100 seconds, the headset is a shell on his ear, the voices distant, the breathing loud. He runs a private checklist he has never written down, hands, eyes, pulse, oath. The oath is there unbroken, which makes what he just did worse. He did not lack creed, he denied it. He looks at the altimeter and feels as bare as if someone had peeled a rank badge from his sleeve. The realization is not a speech. It is one cold line: you are no longer the hero you trained to be. It lands and then is gone because the airplane still needs flying. A flicker on the canopy, a smudge that could become a threat, and he chooses the most honest action left. Kinetic exit. Not a panicked bolt, not a hissing run, just the efficient removal of a vulnerable shape from a place where bravery buys nothing. He folds the map in his head from combat to transit, picks headings that kiss tree lines and streams, uses the ground as camouflage the way infantry uses shadow. The engine finds its workman rhythm. The heart walks down from the ledge by slow, stubborn steps. He stays low until the concrete appears like a promise, and he rides the approach as if the pattern were a liturgy. Touchdown is clean. Roll out straight. When the prop slows to a disc and then to separate blades, the hangar wall reflects a pilot who looks older by exactly the amount of pride he just spent. He unhooks the harness too fast and catches himself, resets, moves with the tidy economy that has always been his signature. On the tarmac, someone raises a hand for a question he doesn't want yet. He returns a small nod that says later. In the quiet between engine ticks, he hears the phantom of the saw again, not in the air, but in the memory of the bones. He will call it fatigue when he writes the line. He will call it weather when he chooses words for a superior. Alone without a form to fill, he calls it what it is, irrelevance, arriving in a beautiful uniform and asking his creed to step aside. He turns his back to the strip, breathes in oil and cold iron, and tells himself tomorrow he will climb instead of dive. He knows the sky may not ask him to prove it. Morning frost turns the Mustang's aluminum the color of old pewter. The field is quiet enough that you can hear canvas slap somewhere down the line and a kettle hiss in a tool shed. Hans-Werner Lerche walks the captured fighter without a clipboard, one glove off so the other hand can feel metal fasteners, the language of how things come apart and go back together. He presses his palm to a quarter-turn latch and turns it. The panel lifts like a page. No coaxing, no ritual. Underneath, the plumbing is routed like a diagram you could draw from memory after seeing it once. He does not smile. He counts. Hinges. First 5 identical, replaceable, each pinned in the same direction, so that a tired mechanic does not lose time guessing whether he is fighting the design or his own hands. He closes the panel, walks to the gun bay, clicks the catches, and opens a door that asks to be opened. Bores look back at him in a row, feed chutes broad and forgiving belts that want to lie where they belong. He runs a knuckle along a bracket and feels no burrs left by hurry. The speed here is not sloppiness. It is a decision carried through every inch of metal. Hard points next. He crouches beneath the wing and touches the lugs where the drop tanks sit, noting the way they are braced for clumsy hands and bad weather. The plumbing couplings seat with a certainty that ignores human frailty. Twist. Click. Sealed. He thinks of a winter in France, when a coupling on a home machine was a prayer more than a part, and a truck idled for an hour, so the heat of a muffler could con a stiff rubber sleeve into cooperation. Here the sleeve is the right length every time, the clamp the right size, every time the band screw placed where a glove can reach it blind. He steps to the engine cowl, and opens that as well. The big American power plant sits inside like a piece of furniture, in a clean room, everything labelled in a language that is not his, and still makes sense. Filters on top, primary lines along the edges, electrical looms cradled in brackets that repeat from one side to the other. He picks out the 4 bolts that would begin an engine change and counts the knuckles until a hoist could lift. He sees the operation like a shadow play, the crate waiting, the chain sling, the cradle that accepts weight without requiring a whispered apology to balance. He hears in his head the pace of a depot, where this happens 3 times between lunch and dark. A mechanic from the German side, Kruger, long arms, nervous humour, stands a step away with a rag over his shoulder. Ugly, he offers, because habits die slow. Lärz answers by tapping the latch again. Predictable, he says. Kruger nods and doesn't argue. They both know beauty when they see it. They also know what gets airplanes back into the air. On the bench sits a small heap of Allied spares from the stores. Truck plugs in waxed paper, a set of hoses, ringed and tagged 2 magnetos that look like twins because they are. The tags have numbers that match numbers. The handwriting does not matter, only the alignment of symbols. He piles them, repiles them, notes how they stack without threatening to slide. He tries to imagine a fitter rein in his sleeves, reaching for one of these in the half-light and getting it right by touch. The picture forms without effort. He circles the tail and finds another panel, another latch that behaves another bracket, inviting a replacement part like a handshake. This is not elegance. It is presence, he says to no one, and to everyone. The words fall into the hangar and land the way a tool lands on a bench, heavy, honest, not designed to charm. He does not mean them as surrender, and they do not feel like a wound. They feel like an inventory taken at last with the numbers that match the world. The hangar door rolls a foot with a rattle, and a draft comes through that carries the smell of fuel and damp rope. Outside, a truck coughs into life. Someone shouts the time. He watches 2 ground men wheel a dolly past with a crate that's stenciled in fat letters and looks exactly like the crate beside the bench and exactly like the one still on the truck. He has loved machines that asked a man to be perfect. This one asks a system to keep a promise. He knows which request the age will meet more often. A senior officer drifts close enough to pretend this is an informal look, hands behind his back, the stance of a man who expects to be reassured. He tilts his head at the open panels, the blunt fittings, the squared-off ideas built into every seam. Lärz gives him the tour without theatre. Here, here, here. Timer beats a depot. Crew can hit swaps. They can plan for mistakes. The design refuses to punish. He does not talk about grace in the vertical or the sweet roll into a climbing turn or the way a Messerschmitt stick can feel like thought itself. He talks about an engine lifted and another engine seated before midnight. He talks about a wingtip kissed by a pole and a new tip on by morning. He talks about how you can crash through a day and return tomorrow as if nothing broke because the parts were there and the hands knew what to do. He does not say, "I am tired." He says the machine returns. He does not say, "I am ashamed." He says the rate of return changes the fight. The officer nods in ways that mean nothing and everything. At some level, both men know that doctrine is not a poem but a schedule, and that schedules win arguments without raising their voices. He signs for a short hop in the afternoon and takes the Mustang up for a final quiet look. The pattern is empty. The air seems rinsed. He tests nothing extreme. He sets cruise and watches the needles hold, feels the engine ask only that he be awake. He imagines the line of them from airfield to sea, from sea to factory, from factory back to airfield, a loop of presence too large for romance. On downwind, he glances at the lugs again and thinks of fuel miles added to a day by 2 simple circles of metal. Simplicity repeated becomes distance. Distance becomes time. Time becomes choice. On the ground, the kettle still hisses. He shuts down, and the prop blades separate into their own small clock. He climbs out and leaves the canopy open so the cockpit can exhale. The glove goes back on. He walks the length of the wing and presses each latch flat, with the heel of his hand a ritual without superstition. When Kruger asks if the report will be kind, he says it will be accurate. He will write that the airplane is not delicate and should not apologize for it. He will write that what makes it dangerous is not what happens in a duel but what happens in a week. Before he reaches the door, he turns once more and looks at the open gun bay. Belts weight, patient and heavy, the work of feeding them made idiot-proof for a reason. He imagines a night with no moon and a crew chief with a stubbed toe and a bad back, and still the lid comes down and the latches click, and the guns are ready when the sky greys. He does not add adjectives. He adds the final line the institution needs, the one that trades pride for clarity. This design keeps promises at scale. A war that rewards, that will not ask whether your burst was perfect. It will ask whether you were there at the hour. He closes the bay, feels the latch settle, and lets his hand rest on the panel a second longer than required. The tally is not written in kills or claims today. It is written in how quickly metal becomes airplane, and airplane becomes presence overhead. He can live with that sentence because it is true, and because the truth finally is not speaking to him alone. It is speaking to the hangar, the depot, the map, the calendar. It is speaking to the part of the service that decides what survives. He leaves the lights off as he goes, and the Mustang gleams in the dim like a tool left within reach for the morning shift. The hangar is colder now, and the winter light makes everything honest. Hans-Werner Lersch sits with his logbook closed, and a pencil he does not need. He has run out of ways to call the same truth by gentler names. The fear he kept under the oath that one day the duel would stop deciding anything has arrived in a uniform of crates, schedules, and drop-tank lugs. It does not swagger. It shows up. He thinks in ratios because feelings have wasted enough fuel. The map in his head redraws itself as a timetable how fast a machine returns to the sky after contact. How many airframes can be lifted into the corridor before the hour turns? How often a damaged bird becomes a flying bird before night? The numbers settle into one sentence he can hand to a staff officer or a mechanic without changing a word: sortie availability per hour of frontline demand. Count the times you can be overhead when the line asks. Divide by the hours the line asks. That is the balance of the war. Once he measured victory in angles and seconds, the sweet geometry of an energy fight won by a steadier wrist. He still respects that craft. The hand still remembers. But he cannot ignore the procession he has witnessed, fresh escorts stepping into tired air engines, swapped without ceremony, ammunition and fuel moving like clockwork water. He wanted the air to reward the best burst. It rewards presence. The Mustang is not a better poem than a 109 or a Dora. It is a better promise kept more often. Acceptance is not self-hatred. It is fidelity to the real. He can admire the old creed and still retire it from command. He writes the line he has been avoiding, and finds it does not hurt to see it in his own hand. Perfection can win a duel. Availability wins a war. He adds, the part only pilots write with conviction by late 44, availability had a voice in the headset and a shadow on the canopy. He imagines the ratio as a clock in a briefing room. Each tick is a machine coming back alive. Panel off, panel on. Engine out, engine in. Hose off, hose on. Fuel across drop. Tank seated belts. Shut canopy latched. If the tick stays regular, the line breathes. If the tick stutters, the line gasps. His trade is still noble, but nobility does not move the hand on the clock. Repetition does. The pencil rests. He stands, checks, latches by habit, and gives the Mustang a final palm on the cowl, as if acknowledging a colleague rather than an adversary. The fear that once whispered irrelevance now feels like instruction. He can carry it without shame. He will brief with the ratio, argue with the ratio, plan with the ratio. If someone asks what the sky taught him, he will answer with 3 plain lines and stop. Perfection can win a duel. Availability wins a war. And by late 44 availability was airborne and hunting us.